which is immediately following our special meeting. So the start time's later than what was posted, but we also had put on the posting that it would immediately follow this meeting. So this is a work session regarding potential renovation of the existing site. This item was put on by council members Leamer and Lawler. So I'm going to turn it over to them. But before doing so, just so people are aware of what's going on with this, we'll go to the Councilwoman Lawler Pro Tem to kick things off for us, and then Keith Lescarbeau, who many of you are familiar with, is going to then present to the council. The council will have an opportunity there to have a conversation with about it in a work session. And then after that, I believe then the head of the Board of Trustees will have an opportunity to speak regarding the existing site. So that's kind of the sequence of events for this work session. And I think I characterized it correctly, but I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Lawler right now if that sequence is what she was envisioning.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Matt. So it's a council workshop. It's not a public workshop. So that's the difference. That's why we only have the squares of us here. So the purpose is for us to discuss, and we will have the Board of Trustees, President Lori Kelly, come in and offer information that she may have. I felt it was important, as did Rick, to be able to have this on so we can put an actual dollar figure to the current existing site, the library that we have. Now, I'm not a social media person. I am aware, because people send me things, that there is with a select few people out there trying to make this a political maneuver on my part, and that's not true. I want to inform the town on what the price could be to build out the existing site. We have a ballot initiative on in November that would dictate that the only use for the IGA building would be for a library. The town needs and deserves to understand, so they can make an educated choice when they vote, what the price tag would be for the existing site. Now, I have not been able to find any information on this, which is why I wanted to have the workshop. There's a lot of information on the library website, but there is no information to the build out cost. And I really have two questions, and I'm hoping that Keith will be able to answer tonight for us. A lot of the Library Board of Trustees have remarked in the past that its potential to even renovate the building doesn't exist, that it's not able to be renovated. And then the second point is it would cost more to renovate that building than it would cost to actually acquire the old IGA Gilbane building and then build a library. So having never seen any numbers to attach to it, I have no information to be able to make decision on. So tonight we're going to have Keith do a presentation. He has some plans. We do know he works on town buildings. He's worked on the library building. He's familiar with it. That's my introduction I have, and I don't know if Mr. Lima has anything he'd like to add.
No, that's fine at this time. Again, the focus here is, once again, is to let the public know. We'll present some hard figures, and then the public will have those numbers. And library board can present any information that they have tonight. And it'll be out in the open. That's the key. I said it in the beginning. All the cards are going to be face up. Let's make sure that everybody knows what's going on. Okay. Thank you.
Right, so we're going to turn over the presentation then to Mr. Lescarbeau. Want to make sure his microphone is working. Are you there, Keith?
I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their community service and your strong commitment to the town, regardless of what issue it is or what side of it you're on. But anyway, I'm here. I have some tech support with our staff, and I have our staff architect is here, Peter Borgermeister. We're socially distanced, and my construction manager is available as well. So I basically want to talk about not primarily, but mainly focus on the feasibility of rebuilding or renovating the existing structure. Currently, we have about 10,000 square feet, utilizing every inch. That includes 1,500 square feet of an original residence, which is now currently the children's room. We have a 4,900 square feet, which was the first addition, which is at the main entrance off the parking lot. We have the second edition, which is 2,650 square feet on slab. So we have slab, crawl space, and an intermediate space. We have about 550 square feet in the attic, which is mainly useful for storage. It's only on the perimeter of the mezzanine and has low headroom, so it's mainly a storage area. And then we have about another 400 square feet on what we'll call the pavilion or the small tower area. So we've got about 10,000 square feet of existing space. Currently, libraries have become very complex, very spacious, very tech savvy. No longer is a library a bunch of bookshelves with a circulation desk. There are many components to a library. They've become community centers, education centers, history centers, business centers. But in this case, I think everyone's on the right track with more space, no doubt. So as far as expanding the existing space, two options, right? We can go up on the existing footprint to a second floor level, or we can expand to the west towards Caswell. Now, if we go to a second level, it was hoped from the beginning that we could just add a second floor. After investigation, and I think Peter, could you I just wanted to introduce our architect, Peter, here.
You want me to move?
Yeah, you can come. I think this Peter is here, and Peter and I have spent hours reviewing existing plans and existing conditions. And again, I just wanted to introduce Peter. Again, thank you for coming, Peter, and spending all the time. So we've evaluated existing conditions, and because of the shape of the building and the mezzanine that's involved, in order to build up on the existing footprint a second floor level, we would have to, it would be most efficient to demolish the first floor level. Because the existing main area, the 4,900 square feet, the first addition, is built with a large mezzanine cutout with steel beams around the perimeter on columns. So currently we don't have a second floor or a first floor ceiling or a second floor that exists to build on. So in order to do that, the first floor walls would have to remove the exterior skin, clapboard, and plywood, and would have to remove the interior drywall to create the layout in the framing corridors to support the new work necessary to carry the second floor beams and posts that would be required to fill in the void created by the mezzanine. Much more efficient. Rather than remove the skin of the exterior and the interior and then reconfigure the existing layout of framing, much more efficient to demolish the top of wall, build a new partition with the proper layout, and to raise that wall. Much more efficient. So we've come to the conclusion that building out to the west would be the most efficient way to proceed. Not only because of the existing conditions that exist on the existing structure, first floor level footprint, but because in doing that, we would have to demolish 10,000 feet to build 15,000 feet. Whereas if we add on to the west end, we can simply build the 5,000 or 6,000 feet that we need and leave the 10,000 feet in place. So this, an additional advantage is that the current library could continue to operate while that 6,000 feet is being added on the west. We're calling it 6,000 because even though 5,000 would make 15, we need what's called service area. We need hallways, we need common areas, stairways, entranceways, areas that can't be furnished and habited that have to remain open. So for 15,000 square feet, we would need 16,000 square feet, at least 8 to 10% of common area to facilitate the useful area. So most efficient way to build at the existing site, we feel, would be to add on, to build on the west. The cost or some of the advantages, as I mentioned to that, is that the existing library could operate until most of the construction was done on the west end. And then at some point, I think it would be desirable, once you have the information on optional schematics and layouts, that you would choose to gut the existing library interior to create an open flow and reconfiguration of the existing that would combine with the added on space. Open layouts and one level layouts are most desirable in libraries today. It creates a flow, it creates an openness, and if any division or any compartmentation is ideally done with glass, and to keep that open feel, you know, even though you're creating separate and private areas, to keep that open area, keep that area open. You know, we can create seminar areas, we can create adult reading areas, children areas with small program compartmentized areas of the children's area, adult areas with program areas there, large program areas that can be opened after hours electronically and facilitate businesses, meeting for conference and private gatherings, community organizations. We might want to have a small local historic town space where the Historical Society can do demonstrations and provide exhibits and store documents, circulation areas, obviously, staff areas, obviously, sitting areas, a lot of flat roof area there on the existing structure. There's about 1,500 square feet of flat roof area with a beautiful view that could be utilized with an earthen roof, pavers, and with what they would call a ballasted secured roofing system, and create a green space there that with railings could be utilized, and a great area to sit and enjoy the view and the air probably 6 months of the year. Because we do have a restricted site, obviously, right? When we build this out, we're going to have a building and we're going to have just enough parking. So there really are no patio or veranda areas outside. So the roof would offer that to the mix, I think. So now, no question, we could build a beautiful state-of-the-art library there. I think you have to look at this with, I want to present all of this information just as factual information with no preference. My preference is really what the voters decide they need and want to fund. I mean, that's who's using it and paying for it. They need to give us our marching orders, and then, you know, we can run with it. We have all the talent we need with realtors and lawyers on our council and engineering departments. And we can do successful, like we've done, restoring the towers and the Kinney Bungalow and the Sunset Farmhouse and the South Beach Pavilion and the rebuild of the North Beach Pavilion. We have all the resources. And I think we have to look at the numbers two different ways. You know, we have the potential to do this efficiently, similar to the North Pavilion, where part of the old structure was utilized. We created a 14,000 square foot facility with 263 changing rooms, 10 stall unit bathrooms, foyer, beautiful foyer, first aid room, state-of-the-art concession with all of the requirements, mahogany decking, granite countertops, silestone in the bathrooms, all wall-hung urinals and toilets, all low efficiency. Rhode Island's very first Green Act project in the state, which requires a certain amount of LEED and IGCC standards, International Green Construction Code standards, and it's difficult to achieve those standards when you don't have heating systems and insulation that help you achieve points towards that accreditation. But we were actually Rhode Island's, North Pavilion was Rhode Island's #1 Green Act project. They were actually in the process of setting up their regulatory office and administrators for that. And we kind of did that together. And that was all done for $2.1 million. And that was done from starting on September 15th and completed on May 15th. Okay. So in about 7 months, and 3 of those months were January, February, and March. That's the planning, the permitting, the CRMC permitting, from concept to turnkey, done. 7 months, done. 2.1. 263 changing rooms, not 100, not 200. Outdoor showers, 14,000 square feet. And that project, I think, if it was just thrown out against the wall, the public wall, with all the change orders and soft costs that come with that, engineering, and that was all done in-house. You know, we worked with the town engineers on that, and that was all done. I mean, that would have been at least a $4 million project if it was just, you know, thrown off the wall. So in any case, we have the potential, but I think when we look at the numbers, we kind of have to look at them as if we go with our resources, you know, with in-house engineering and town engineering and staff all working together versus, you know, what could be $500,000 in soft costs on this, engineers and architects, and coming up with a design right from the get-go, and then putting this out to public. But anyway, standard numbers for this type of construction vary from around $300 a square foot to $400 a square foot. Okay. And $400 a square foot really gets you fancy stuff. And low end, you know, and what by fancy stuff, I mean maybe towers and granite and stainless steel and just top of the line items. The low end gives you maybe a metal building on slab, plastic laminate versus silestone. All of those decisions along the way are what would determine the square foot price, obviously. So you're in that 350, 100, about 350. So if we're looking for 15,000 square feet, let's say on a rebuild, right, with a fresh site, you know, we're probably looking at around $6 million at 15,000 square feet for 400. We're looking at $5 to $6 million, around $5 million for middle of the road. Okay. And that's industry standard. That's, you know, that's out there. That's, you know, that's common knowledge, that we can put a new site from scratch, $5 million. Now, at the existing site, we have challenges with, you know, original residence where the school building was. That was a house, and then we have an addition on an addition, and so there's steel that meets wood that meets engineered trusses. So there's some connection issues. So there are. I think you have to look at this like, okay, we want a library, and what I would call the base. The library itself, what's inside the walls, the library, no matter where we put it, here, there, or there, we have to have a library within that envelope. Okay, so that's a basic cost. We want this 15,000 square foot minimum space. So we have to start with that, whether it's in the existing structure, a new structure, or a supermarket, wherever we put it, we have a base of a library. And that in itself, for that type of square footage, is probably in the $3 million range to build that beautiful library with everything from the walls in, everything from the walls in. So monetarily, we're trying to look at, well, where's the most reasonable place to put it, and what are the pros and cons of that location? So obviously, if we build a building, then then that building has to be built from scratch. The site has to be developed, the utilities have to be brought in, the foundation has to be laid. Okay, so that can be done, and there is an efficient side to that because there's nothing in the way, and there are design advantages to that with no restrictions of existing footprints. So in rebuilding the existing site, now we need to add on to the end, and then I would recommend gutting the inside of the existing so that we can create this open layout so that we don't have a compartmentized space, so we can open that up and open that flow. And we can certainly compartmentize, but we can do it with glass, and we can do it in a way that it doesn't make the place feel small. And we have that beautiful flat roof there that we can load up with skylights and utilize that mezzanine, bring the light in, and make it feel like the sky's the limit in there instead of, the storage space over your head there. And just open that right up. So that's what I would do there. As far as cost on that, again, I think you're in about a 4.5 range, because you have to factor in not only the square footage of building the addition, which is pretty cut and dry, right? We're looking at that, and we're probably at a couple of $1 million, about 2.1 in building that 6,000 square feet. Okay. Then we have to add to that the renovation of the existing structure. And again, I think you want to gut that out. So now maybe you create the entrance and the circulation and all of the loud activity right at that front door, at the children's room. And then the main area, what's now the main area, becomes more of a adult book stack area, surrounded by smaller compartmentized rooms, glass enclosed, that create quiet rooms and work studies and the smaller spaces without confining. And then, of course, the new area, could be your large program area, almost a small auditorium areas, and those largest open spaces could be created. But all in all, I think we're in about a 4.5 to $5 million renovation of the existing, right? And then the other option, of course, is the Pier Market location. Now, even though we already have the envelope, we have the shell, so it's desirable, for architects. They like to go into a clean slab. We have a big empty room that's very versatile. We have the clean slate advantage of that space, but there's significant work to be done. It does need a roof. It does need an engineered, pitched insulation system that's computerized, and it creates a pitch on the roof. I would recommend a full slab removal that will facilitate all the new layout of all of the new utilities systems. I don't want to sound like a leftist, but I think we do have to think about global warming. There is we're putting a place, churches and towns tend to stay where they are. And, we look at South Kingston and the Peacedale Library and the Hale Library, they've been there forever. And so we got to kind of think down the line a bit on that. And I'm not saying we'll be rowing our boats around the library anytime soon, but I think we have to think about moisture content in the slab, things of that nature. That was a wet area that was built up originally. And, there are, there are books you can look at, Brave New Arctic by Mark Cerise, and Farewell to Ice, Peter Wyndham's, major authorities on the topic. And some of the models that they projected for where we would be at in 2030, we've already exceeded in 2020. So again, I'm not trying to say the sky's falling on this or anything. And if you had asked me a year ago about this, I'd say, you're obsessive, or you're just not being realistic. But I think you have to at least take a quick look at that in the back of your mind, of those sites. And so, like I say, there could be dampness issues and things of that nature 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the line that could make another rebuild necessary. And so I think it's something to think about. But so some of the I think some of the major pros and cons of the three different areas, if we look at the existing site, obviously, we have full foundation. All of the footings are over 5 feet. The walls are all over 12 inches. We have, they're all reinforced. A good, everything there is a good base for what you would want to do. And the existing structure, there's steel in there. So that would simply be an interior moderate renovation to the existing structure with the add-on on the end. So you're really just building 6,000 feet and renovating 10,000 feet to create 15,000 square feet of useful area. It's a familiar location. I think, as far as parking, I would recommend removing the dumpster. The police station has a dumpster. The library has a dumpster. I think if we put a dumpster between in the back that both could utilize, create an access driveway from Caswell, we could gain not only a couple of spots for the where the dumpster is, but also the access route for the truck to pick it up that's blocking another couple of spots. So I think you could get at least 3 or 4 spots from the dumpster location. If we were to slide the comfort station out of there, we could get another 4 or 5 spots, plus eliminate that utilization of the site, which would end a little bit of congestion there. I think we could designate street parking on Caswell, at least in front of the library, before the fire department driveway. We could utilize several spots on the Kingstown Road side. So all in all, I think we could probably develop about 35 spots for the library, but obviously it's a tight spot, and the end result would be a big building with a small parking lot, and not much else. So that's where you're at there. The pier obviously has its baggage, we'll say, with HOAs and unknowns of the affiliation with the rest of the condos. But I leave that to the council lawyers and realtors who are the experts on that. But certainly something to think about. But obviously, there's 18,000 square feet there. It's a beautiful building, commercially built, made to, carry long rows of heavy stuff, either books or canned goods. So it's a clean slate, and there's 18,000. You could build in 18,000 square feet of useful space there. I think would be useful. For that, I think you're at the 5 million mark, because you have a roof to redo completely. It's probably a $700,000 roof. You've got to do what's called an engineered insulation system, rigid insulation system that actually comes with tapered panels. If you go up there now, you'll see there's puddles, there's ponding. There's just not enough low slope pitch to create drainage. And again, a very big, large space that's up there on that roof could be utilized for solar, for green area, for earthen roof, pavers and outdoor utilization. It's already, it's railed in. So a new roof, I would remove the slab completely so that we can not only accommodate new utility layouts, but we can do proper moisture protection. We get a nice yellow heavy barrier in there, plastic, rigid insulation, and then another layer of the barrier, and then the wire, and then the concrete. So we could create a slab that will inhibit moisture infiltration. And then also I think the front of the facade of the building needs a little work. If you look close, you see there's some movement in the siding, and so a little bit of work there. So there's some major tasks that have to be done. I think another thing we have to consider of any site is the new HVAC requirements. They're with the COVID, not only spacing, physical spacing of attendees, but the HVAC systems now are becoming, well, you see one of the line items in the meeting with that company that wants, I don't know, $130,000 or $20,000 for about the equivalent of 4 rooms for an ultraviolet mini split system. very expensive. So we're probably looking at well over $700,000 HVAC system with the MERV 16 filters, with the HEPA filters, with the UV treatments, and really makes sense. If you're going to cram people into an interior that you're 19 times more likely to have a problem. And hopefully this whole thing goes away by the time the place is built. But obviously at this point in time, we have to consider that reality or that new norm. So that's certainly something to look at. So I think in conclusion, I think the end result is, that we're really splitting hairs on cost. We're all in that upper $4 million to $5 million range with all of the options. So I think really, we need a goal, a common goal, and once we have that, then certainly everyone, we have all the resources on this screen and in our town departments to make it happen. Once we get a common goal, and like I said before, I think that's really up to the voters where they want to be, what they want to fund, what they want to use, and I think we have all of those resources to make it happen. But we need a library within whatever structure we opt to utilize, and I think that that is really probably the voters' decision. And once we get that decision, we can march with that. Do we want to utilize the existing structure, which will save resources, will probably be a little less, but be restricted to some of the some of the things that the existing structure is going to limit us to, and have that that tight somewhat of a tight site to deal with. Do we want this big 15,000 square feet is really a minimal mark. If you look at new libraries, if you look at the Tiverton Library, it's 25,000 square feet. But if you walk in there and you stand in the middle of it and you look around at what they have, you don't really feel overwhelmed. You look at it and say, yeah, this is a good library. This is good space. This is not, it's not the Taj Mahal. So I think 15,000 square feet is really really the minimum for current standards of a library. And I another factor, I think, if we did do a new site, then obviously you could partially fund it with the sale of the two buildings, would almost pay for it. If you consider possibly $2.5 million from the pier and another at least $1.5 million from the existing site, would almost fund a completely new site. A new site advantages is that clean slate to design whatever you want with no restrictions. Advantages of that, and it does create that beautiful campus. Enhances and enriches the campus that we have there now with the baseball fields, the library, the community center, the elementary school, the baseball fields. It creates a campus there, a community campus that is desirable for kids to get out of school, go to the library, go play baseball. Grandma drops them off and goes to the community center, and it's a safer site. I think both the peer market and these are all facts that I'm trying to bring in here and not show any preference to any particular site. We build it and they'll come. But the existing site, I've heard concerns from fire and police staff where they're zooming out in and out, and you're right on Caswell and Kingston. It's kind of a busy location right on the street. But and a new site would obviously, the disadvantage is that you'd have to create a whole new infrastructure, a whole new utility supply and site development. And then, the existing has its limitations with what's there. You've got to reconfigure things and connect two things, and you know, we've all heard the famous cry, you know, it's cheaper to just build it new than take it apart and do it. But we kind of take things apart and do, so that's, for us, that's second nature, but definitely doable. But I think on the big picture, it's really what you want as an end product. And whether it's 4.8 or 5.2, the big picture, I think, is really what should be considered on where do we want to be? You know, where do we want to end up? You know, and I think really that's the decision. The dollars are really, I think, close, and the effort is similar in any of those locations. So I think I've made my point. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. One other point I wanted to make is the Tiverton Library was $11 million for 25,000 square feet, but it only cost them $3 million. The rest was grants and donations. So I mean, there's that to consider
Right.
as well.
So thank you, Keith. You certainly covered a lot. Tonight's workshop really was only on the existing site, but I didn't want you to cut you off because I didn't want to have anyone say, oh, she wouldn't let them speak about the Belmont building. But for the focus of our conversation is really on the existing site.
Right.
Could you go back? You gave so much information and so many numbers, and I know people at home are just trying to piece it all together. So I jotted down a few things because I'm trying to price it out. Now, you had said that if we were to renovate and just add on to the west, I believe you said 6,000 square foot, that would probably cost about 2.1 million for the 6,000 square feet. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think you're at 4.8 for the complete project. Renovating the existing plus the new addition, I think you're at 4.8.
Okay, 4.8. And that would include, Keith, then the furnishings you're adding in for
Everything. That includes everything. That includes moving the comfort station to create additional parking and less activity on an already constricted site.
Now, I know you've worked with Mr. Wright about a location for that comfort station, correct? That would be on Veterans Park?
Wherever you want it.
Okay, so you said maybe about how many spaces do you think that with a trash dumpster and that would add to?
I think you'd get 4 to 5 spaces out of the comfort station. I think you'd get 2 to 3 spaces out of the relocation of the dumpster and the access needed to get the truck into it. And then you could do Caswell and Kingston Road on the same side of the street as the library. I think you could add another 8 spots. So I think you could get up to about 35 utilizing designated parking on the street, removing the comfort station and the, bless you, and the dumpster.
Okay, great, thank you. Rick, did you have any questions for Keith right away? Since you and I sponsored the motion?
No, I think it was good. I think Keith laid out, again, this was basically to let people know. I mean, a lot of people in town want to know, and a lot of people in town have said, why don't we just do the existed building? I mean, a lot of people like that little location. They like our library the way it is. And again, it's a great place. It won the award for best place. That's what the award says. I've been contradicted on that about the people that work there, but the people that work there are great. There's no question about that. I have no complaints about any of the people that work for the town or outside of the town that work in the town. So again, it's the place. Any existing buildings, that could come up in another conversation for me, because I think people know how I feel. If you're going to build state of the art, you do it from scratch. And again, Keith, you brought up great points. I tried to bring them up the other night, but again, I was social media. They went at me left and right. Basically, everything is configured on square footage. It's square footage prices. Again, you want to get into detail of, IT stuff and all of that. It may not be square footage there, but it's calculated in a formula that's very similar, basically on the material that they use. And they have those calculations. And I know Keith especially has an IT guy that works for him, and that's what they do when they go into these projects. So again, there are reimbursements. There's OLS. I know that people are going to come up with these questions. Right now, my biggest concern would be during the banking crisis, everything in the state was shut down and there was no money to go to anybody. So again, I like the fact that we have OLIS and hopefully that money would be there for us when we move forward and when these projects would take place. But on renovations, it's about 42%. And on something's brand new, it's 50%. So as Keith mentions to you, $400 a square foot, 20,000, 8 million. You're only really out 4 million. So we're right. We always come back to, seems that we come back to that 4 million number. So if you did renovate a brand new facility and it was 8 million, 50% reimbursement, you're down to 4 million. But you don't have a CAM fee. There are other things you don't have. It's not off the tax roll. So again, location. I mean, when I look at libraries, I look at the Peacedale Library. That building's been there for how long? And they're put in locations so that they become historical. They're there forever. And they pick these locations so they're in locations that they can be there forever. This is not a project that we're going to build and then 25 years from now, I hope not, somebody comes in and goes, oh, we don't like that location, we need to move to somewhere else. Or because of whatever, Mother Nature, we got to get it out of there. This decision should be the right decision now. And that, I think, is what Keith explained. And that's what I'm looking for. People question my, am I for a library? Am I not for a library? No, I'm for a library. I've said it a million times. The best the town can afford. And what can we afford is up to the taxpayers. So again, I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to go around the council if there's comments or questions for Mr. Lescarbeau. So Mr. Lima usually go first, but you just went. So then Mr. Murray.
Yes, Matt, I had a question. Rick, it's combined all three. Back in June 17th, 2019, Matt, you placed a bid. We're going to approve a bid to have an architect. We went through architects. We casted a net. We accepted one bid. It was an up and down vote to have the current library assessed on what the build out cost was. And nobody motioned it. So I'm just wondering, why are the cards on the table now, Rick, before the primary? I mean, why all of a sudden
Well,
you're
people
a
are
big
asking.
library
People are asking me.
proponent?
That's what they're doing. People are asking. They're asking.
Actually,
So,
if you go back
why
to
not?
that motion, Patrick, it didn't have this attachment to it. It wasn't looking
Right.
at what the town needs. Not
Right.
one of us disagree with the fact that we have outgrown our current library. The whole project started because we needed a better and bigger child's area and family bathroom. The proposal that was on last year did not stipulate to anything, any of the changes that were needed, brought to you by the needs assessment from the library needs architect. So it didn't have any of those things.
Oh.
So that's why I didn't move it forward, because it really wasn't for renovating with what the library needs to be renovated to bring it to meeting the town needs.
So you're saying it was just fixing what was there?
It was fixing what was there, but not adding what was needed. Clearly,
Okay,
we need
gotcha.
more.
Okay,
Right.
understood. Keith, how you doing?
Yes, sir. Good, and you?
Okay, sorry to. I want to apologize that you're placed in this position.
I avoided it as long as I could.
And anything I say or do tonight has no reflection on you,
Okay, same here.
okay? So, current library, what's the flood zone of the current library?
Well, we all know that that was a wet site that was raised and developed. And I think at the current time, we're dry. If you go down, I've been in the crawl spaces, been in the basement, we're dry, we're good. My concern is, I don't have a big concern, but I think we need to at least consider what might be the case 30 or 50 years from now. And certainly we can do things in the construction to resist that in both buildings in that area. The new construction has a basement. We can certainly do things to the slab to resist that moisture infiltration. And, you know, it's doable, but I think it's something you need to, you know, keep in the back of your mind.
Well, you're less than 100 feet within an AE flood zone.
Right.
Do you understand? You saw that map,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep.
Now, do you plan on elevating the building any for any future, you know, in case they move the goalposts inland a little bit on the flood zone, then that would put the current library clearly in a flood zone, correct?
Correct.
And then the Belmont building, because it was raised 50 years ago, is in the 500-year flood zone, where the current library is in very close proximity of the 100-year flood zone. Do you agree
Right.
with that?
I agree.
Okay.
And that, you know, that's why I brought up the issue as something to think about.
Right. So you don't think we should elevate the building?
No, you know, we do have a foundation wall that comes above the lot there. The biggest concern would be the slab in the back, but that is slightly raised as well. It's flush with the existing floor level. So, I mean, we're good today. We're good now. And, you know, I wish I knew, you know, what the sea levels were going to be 15 years from now. There's, you know, many opinions. I wish I knew, you know, when we were going to have a vaccine. There's certain things that, you know, we can't really say as a fact. And I don't want to, you know, I don't want to give any information that isn't reliable.
Understood. Okay. With all things being equal, the current location, and then that's in the 100-year flood zone, which is a lower elevation, and the Belmont location, which is a 500-year flood zone, which is in a higher elevation. Both costs are the same. There's a vaccine for the COVID. Everything's cherry cheesecake. Where should we build?
And
The lower elevation or
Right.
the higher elevation?
and you can do things to that new slab to help make it
But you'd have
impermeable.
to raise, if you raise that to the 500-year flood level, you'd probably have to raise it about what, 16, 15, 20 feet?
Well, I mean, while you're doing it, you'd probably go a couple of feet, you know, 2 or 3 feet. Yeah, while you're doing it. But
That still wouldn't bring you in the 500-year flood zone, correct?
correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's an issue, and really, no one can really say, as a matter of fact, when it will be a problem or how much of a problem it will be.
Right.
So, and you know, there's certainly things you can do to the supermarket slab to make it impermeable and more waterproof. In the mix of the
Well, I mean,
concrete.
my point is, you know, if that's in a 500-year flood zone, where the chances, I think, is 0.2% of having a flood in 500 years, where in a 100-year flood zone, the chances of having a flood per year over a 30-year period is 0.2%. Correct? That's the way
Well,
that formula goes?
Yeah, but you know, you have to keep in mind that, you know, and again, this is why I can't, none of us can say as a matter of fact what's going to happen, but you know, water takes, if you look at geological studies, water takes the path of least resistance. And it's not always an elevation thing. You know, it can be the type of soils, the type of stone within the soils, the veins within the stone. So it's not always an elevation thing. So
I agree. But in the recent floods and the flood maps that are current, are FEMA guidelines for housing and building in the Pier area. What happens is it comes on Beach Street and it goes around up Narragansett Avenue and it comes across on Castle Street. And if we have a major hurricane, they better get that damn fire trucks out of there before you know, they won't be able to get out of it.
well, even now, I mean, you don't even have to say years from now. If you check with DPW, I mean, there are years, you know, every once in a while, they're plowing the streets at the towers. They're plowing the sand, you know, we've had a foot of sand over there on the road with quahogs and seaweed. You know, so again, I think if you don't bring it up and think about it, you're not being thorough in your research. So when and if and when it'll be a problem or when it will be a problem, I can't say. I mean, scientists only are guessing, but it is certainly something to think about.
But with all things being equal, wouldn't it be more prudent to build in a 500-year flood zone where you got some more time, or you know, in the case something does happen, or the predictions are true that you know,
Maybe,
500-year flood would be a safer bet?
maybe.
Okay.
Patrick, but can we still, the topic of the workshop is the existing site. I mean, Matt,
Well,
it's so, I mean, I know we've allowed you to speak about that, but we could be here all night to talk about that. We can have a meeting if you'd like, but tonight's workshop is on the existing site. I'd appreciate if we could stay on topic.
yeah, well, the thing is, if you're gonna pick a site to build a library, I think it's pretty prudent you make sure it's not in a close proximity to a flood zone where if the feds move the goalposts in for the floodplain, then it's going to push it right into a flood zone. I mean, it would just take a couple pencil lines and we're there. And then, you know, the whole flood insurance issue comes in. I
Right.
think cam charges are bad.
Yeah, that's why we go up to the community center, no cam charge. No
Yeah, well,
flood zone.
that's a
There you
whole
go.
different. I wish you people were around during the last 15 when Mannix
I
voted
know.
it to put it in the pier. Then I
Well-
wanted it at the O'Brien wing. So,
Well, we can,
all right, I
we
got
can
some.
still
So,
go there.
all right, Kate. So you
Yes,
got a
sir.
total of, we're talking 16,000 square feet finished product. And the price was 5 million for everything,
4.85 would be a minimum.
4.85 would be a minimum. Okay.
And that was using between a 300 to 400 square foot price.
That's between
300.
350 and 400, 350 a square foot, yeah.
And Keith, you
Okay.
could always elevate that building if you wanted to too, especially the new addition, correct?
I'm sorry, say again, please?
You could always elevate the new addition on that building. If we're putting on a 6,000 square foot addition, you could
Oh,
also elevate that as well.
You could, but ideally you want the floors to be even for
One level.
flow, but one level, yeah.
They raise that floor, you're gonna have to raise the other floor. Okay, so a 6,000 square foot addition is 2.1 million, correct?
Correct,
Okay, that's $350 a square foot.
right.
We paid 133 per square foot for the Belmont with 18,000 square feet ready to go, open span. This is an open span building with no reinventing the outside walls.
A different workshop you're talking about now, Patrick. Can we please stay on topic?
But I'm trying to compare apples to oranges because nobody in the town seems to want to get on that page.
Well, you
Okay,
have-
I'll keep it. I
make a
promise you, I will keep it short.
Make a workshop for it, Patrick.
Right.
Just
This
one
is
on
not-
that subject.
Well, I just hope you got the palm cards all printed out. Oh yeah, got the box checked off for the build out of the library. Got the box checked off for the three students. Just ram it right through just before the primary. I
Not
love
gonna
it.
ram
You better
it.
get to the printer and start printing those palm cards. Okay?
Kind of what you did last election, Patrick. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I've had the same palm cards since
Excuse
2012.
me.
I'm just able to check off what I did. So
Mm.
anyway,
Do you have questions of Keith regarding the existing site?
Yes, sir.
He presented?
okay.
Questions and comments about
Do you have a
that?
ceiling height for the current location after?
Yeah, we would probably do a 10-foot wall and then we would cantilever up and do an open layout, somewhat similar to the, we'd like to do a full pitch roof on that. And then that would give you could create the same height as the mezzanine on the main area.
So it's gonna be a hip roof or?
It's good. No, we go A-frame there, I think would complement the end of the building rather than to keep, that's what they did with the second edition. They expanded the trusses on the hip roof with the flat top, the Dutch top. So this would create just a little more diversity in the architecture and ceiling room inside, openness.
Okay, but the roof's flat then? You have a flat roof?
No, a gable pitch roof. Yeah, full
Pitch
pitch.
roof with a small area for greenery and stuff that you
Well,
can.
we
go up
have the
there.
existing flat roof of 1,500 square feet that could provide
Right.
any flat roof activity.
Right, okay. And you'll be able to utilize the outside beams holding up the mezzanine.
Yes,
Okay.
without putting a second floor on it by going
Right,
west with
right.
the addition, right?
Correct. You don't have to cut them down at all, huh? If you got
No.
a 10-foot ceiling?
No, we would only have to cut the end, to connect the new addition.
Understood.
Like the
Okay,
west side of the hip.
understood. I'm just trying to put all this together. And then parking, you got 35 parking spaces, but we lose the comfort station.
Correct.
Okay.
Patrick, we're just gonna replace it in the pier. Steve already has a place that he can put it right at the end in Parks and Rec.
Was there a cost of that?
Yeah,
That's in there, yeah.
That's
And
in there too?
that's in there,
To move that?
right. And that's,
'Cause I can't get a plumber for that money, that kind of money.
and that still gives you that gives you about 22 spots in the existing lot with less activity.
22 and then another what, 13 on the other side?
Well, we're thinking maybe 5 or 6 on Caswell and 5 or 6 over at on Kingstown. Without,
Right.
ideally, you want to not have to have people cross the street with designated parking.
Right. All right, okay. Where do I be on? Let me see. Yeah. All right. Okay, go ahead, Matt, move on. I'm going to reserve my space to talk again if I need to. Thank you.
Mr. Pugh, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, a few. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the structure of this workshop, I guess, because Jill had mentioned at the top of the workshop that it was a council workshop. It wouldn't be taking public commentary. Is that correct?
I didn't say that. I said that it's a council workshop but we'd have Mrs. Kelly come and speak.
Okay, so we're going to take public comment as well.
Mrs. Kelly was asked to, if you actually send me an email after I said on the meeting, that's up to Matt. That's a procedural question from Matt. I asked that Mrs. Kelly be allowed to speak tonight.
Yeah, that's great. I mean,
I went through the structure of that, but it's a work session for the council to talk with Keith Lescarbeau about this. That's what was proposed and voted on. There's not public comment typically during work sessions, except really at the beach work session, we tend to allow it. But otherwise, budget work sessions, other work sessions, no, because you guys have questions for the two presenters.
Okay, because the motion last week was for a public workshop. So
it is a public workshop. It's the public.
so it's a public workshop, right?
Yeah.
Public workshop. Okay. So
It's not an executive session. It's a public workshop. Right?
Not a council workshop. Yeah. All right. So
Jesse, you know how work sessions operate. You've been through 2 budget cycles. Don't act like it's a mystery. We don't take public work
was
sessions.
put on the agenda as a public workshop.
Yeah, it's public work session. Yes, it's for the public. They watch it, and the council is discussing it. It's not an open forum question and answer. It's fine. Your misunderstanding of procedure, Robert's rules, has confounded me.
Here we
Go
go
ahead.
again.
You don't get it.
Back to the Bible.
Right.
Go ahead.
So Keith, thank you for the time. I appreciate your time and the work you've done. I do want to go through some of this, and I have a couple questions for you as well. I have all the records that I have on the existing library, all the paperwork I have, has it at 8,800 square feet. So that's the number I have. You said we're going to add 6,000. So that would bring you to like 4,800, unless I'm working off of incorrect numbers to start with.
Well, off the plans, we got 1,500 square feet in the children's area. We have 4,900 square feet on the first edition. And what was the date? Do you know the dates on those, Peter? The construction dates? And then the second edition was 2,650 feet. And then what we're calling the pavilion, the small tower area, is approximately 400 square feet. And then the attic, we're giving it 550 square feet. It's not really useful space. The useful space is probably more around 8,800. And if you really factor in that there is service area there are hallways, there are entranceways, there are ways that there are sections that cannot be utilized for library use. But if you do all the numbers and all the math, there's about 10,000 square feet of interior space.
The date is October 4, 1996. That was for the second.
Yeah, so the second edition was 1996.
The first edition, I've not been able to find the date on the plan.
I think that was 74, or
Okay.
might have been, yeah, this first edition. But
74, that sounds plausible.
right, and that's why I think it's important to gut that area, to create the open layout that you need, so we don't add and continue to compartmentize the space.
So then if we gut it, we would lose any of that mezzanine space, right? Because it's gonna be
Yes.
gutted.
Well, just by gutted, I mean, take the finishes off the wall and create new finishes on the wall, take those petitions down that are there to create a new layout. But not the structure itself, not the exterior envelope itself.
That would also allow you to upgrade the energy efficiency of the structure.
Right, and then
by
you-
increasing insulation.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear Peter, but at that point, you can upgrade the energy efficiency of the building. You can run your utilities but mainly create the layout that you want,
Mhm.
But there's no doubt, and I want to stay factual here. I don't want to present a favor any option, because again, I feel that's up to the citizens. But you will have a big building. You will end up with a big building with a small parking lot. That's
Okay.
that's the end result.
All right. Yeah, so it looked like to add parking by moving the dumpster and the warming station, you're adding maybe like 6 spots or something, 5 or 6 spots to the 16 or 17 that we have. And then in order to get anything more than that, we'd be taking away public parking from the streets. So parking that people use for the beach and the beach
Right.
area.
And the west build out is would have to go almost to the sidewalk to get the square footage for one level. So again, it's sidewalk, building, parking lot.
Yep. So I just want to be clear to everyone, that to get the parking even close to what you'd have at the Belmont, the public would lose street parking. That is hard to come by in the summertime.
And if you do decide, if you decided to build where the existing library is, if you wanted to level the whole thing, now it would actually cost you more than a build out of an existing envelope or a new site, because you're demolishing the complete site, and you're building 15,000 square feet as opposed to building 6,000 square feet and renovating 10,000 square feet.
Okay, got it. A couple other things. So one of the things that we've been talking about for the last couple of years is the OLS reimbursement. And everything that I've received regarding that puts us at between 1,900 and 2,500 square feet required for a town this size with the population that we have to get OLS reimbursement.
1,000, yep. 1,000 feet, yep.
So if we're at 1,600, there's no guarantee, not even close to a guarantee, that we're going to get that OLS reimbursement. At least that's what I'm told based on what OLS has communicated. So, if we're factoring that in, but it's not something that we're likely to get if we're building 1,500 or 1,600 square foot library, because it's much lower than the recommendation that we've received. And the same thing with parking. We're going max 35 if you use the street parking. When at the Belmont, we'd have that 57 parking spaces. So these are just things to keep in mind, because I don't think we want to start a project with a vague hope that we get reimbursement. I think we want to be sure that we're going to get that before we break ground. But it's just something to balance out as we're thinking between the two sites.
Right. I mean, there's no doubt when I talk about the base library, that interior from the walls in, the library, what we would call the library itself.
Yep.
There's no doubt that can be put into that open building with less trouble than reconfiguring the existing building. There's no doubt, but obviously that building comes with, the whole baggage and condo baggage.
Yeah. Yep.
And that, you guys are the experts on, and I would defer to you on that.
Okay, got it. And then you said that if you did this plan to add on, you basically be working on that addition while the library remains open. And then you'd shift the library over to that new addition and then do the renovation on the older side.
Right, you could probably do about 60% of the construction and building the envelope of the new addition. But at the point of that completion, you'd have to open the whole building up. You wouldn't want to do half the HVAC in one side and half in the other and half the electrical ones. And you'd want to bring the trades, interior trades all the way through. So you could build the shell. And so for 60% of the construction, the library could technically be reopened. But again, because of the restrictions on the site, I don't know how successful that would be, to infringe on a laydown area for the construction itself and all of those logistic challenges. But certainly a significant portion of the addition could be done before closing the library. Obviously, with the pier, you could completely build the library before the move over. Or with the new building, you could completely build the new building before the new move over. And, just be down the moving time itself.
Okay, so there would be a period where the library had to be closed.
Absolutely. Like I say, you need to run the trades right through. And you wouldn't want the inefficiency of doing half of the building with each trade stop and start.
Okay. All right. And then I guess the only other thing is, do you have any knowledge of the way that the town can use the bond that I do. I'm just curious if you've looked into that as well.
I'm here just for construction information and, mainly to let you know that you really are in the same range of costs with all three options. You're in the same ballpark. And really, I think the big decision is, where do you want to end up? What do you want to end up with? And I think you're really splitting hairs on the cost of putting that base library in a reconfigured existing versus the open market with all of its requirements of roof and slab and some exterior work, and a new site, which would be very efficient, but you have to, you do. So it's really, what do you want? Do you want that community expansion of the Sprague area, of the school area? Do you want that? Do you want that big commercial building with the extra footage it would allow at the pier, and the openness that layout offers? Do you want to be in the existing location with the comfort of, where everyone's been and has gone, and the efficiency of resources that, we're not throwing away a building. We utilize an existing structure, very green, very, very green and friendly that way.
Yeah, so either, if it was the current building or the Belmont, we're renewing an existing building either way, that with those options.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the thing with the bond, and this isn't necessarily for you, but we're in the workshop, so I might as well bring it up just so the public's aware. The bond that was approved by the voters can only be used to acquire and renovate a building. So the bond council has said both verbally and in writing that we can't use that approved bond on the existing building because we haven't acquired it, because we already owned it. We didn't buy it. And that's his opinion on that. And he is the bond counsel that the town relies on. So that's something where we'd either have to get a new bond to do that, or we would use some sort of, town funds that already exist, or a different type of borrowing. So I just wanted to make sure that was out there, because it is specific to acquiring new space or renovating new purchase space. So, but that's it for now. It's unfortunate that the public can't speak. I think a lot of people thought they would be able to, but thanks for the time, Keith.
Keith, a couple more questions. The 6,000 square foot addition, are you looking at it as a one level, or would it be multi-levels?
One level, I think one level is desirable for the flow and openness of the library. It is just easier to migrate, and we're not dealing with separate levels that are elevated up to and with elevators and handicap issues. you know, you could minimize that footprint by adding a second floor. But, you know, the square foot price goes up, and I just think a one level operation, you know, we've toured several libraries, and that one level seems to be the goal for open space.
Okay, so if we could we put a second floor on that? What do you think that would cost? Pop an elevator in?
Right. I think you'd probably add around $50 a square foot additional to the second level. So probably $150,000 to $200,000 with the addition of an elevator and the extra unit cost on second floor level construction.
Because if we were to do that, we could have a really great children's area and a really nice view of the water from the green space that you pointed out on the top.
And an outdoor space,
Yeah.
because you'd minimize taking up of the green area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when we're talking about the OLS money, you know, we're in a different time than we were. We're in a post-COVID world. You know, we have no idea when OLS will be funded again. We need to really, the town needs to really keep that in mind as far as our spending. You know, certainly we can apply for it, but we don't know. The state doesn't have much money right now. We still don't know how much money the state's going to be giving us for our budget. So I think we need to be really cognizant of the fact that OLS might not be funded for a while, and we may never be reimbursed for a good period of time, if ever. And I know Chris Bagoli is on tonight. Chris, can you speak to, Jesse made an excellent point that the bond that we have can only be used at the IGA building. But is there a way for the council to, without going to referendum, be able to bond out for a project such as this?
Yeah, of course.
I would have to, you know, defer to bond council and see what they have to say on our options that would be available to us to move forward with this.
So there's a certain percentage of our budget that we're allowed, if I'm correct, to borrow out every 6 months.
It's every
Yes,
year.
without going to bond, that's the, is it about 450, 10%?
Okay.
No, it's roughly 900, Chris, I think it's roughly 900,000 per.
900,000.
It's
Okay.
10, all right.
So if we wanted to do a project such as what Keith is saying, we could do this without going out for a referendum. Keith, how long do you think this project would take? You expedited that one at the North Beach Clubhouse, and you went through that timeline for us. What time frame are we looking here?
I think it's a 1-year project.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
all three options, 1 year. You know, obviously, you know, it depends, you know, who does it and how busy they are and all of that. But that's from our standpoint, we could do it in a year. You know, we've done as much in half a year, so I wouldn't see any problem with that.
So we could even work conceivably right now on this project while the library is being lightly used because of the COVID restrictions we have on the population at hand. You guys could really get in there and do a good amount of this work. We could approve it so you could be in there, and maybe when we're out at the end of this COVID, we'll have a nice, beautiful library. It's conceivable, correct? You could do it quickly.
I can't speak for the COVID, but I can say we can get it done.
Okay, so you could get it done within a year. And Keith, just the numbers too that you mentioned for the alternative site at the IGA, the $5 million. We all need to remember that's also a $2.8 million acquisition cost. So that 5 million is really 7.8, and then you have the CAM fees, which are about $38,000 a year. That can go up $5,000, 5% every year. And not to mention the fact that would not allow that property, what is currently a Pier Liquor, as well as the old IGA building, we took them off the tax roll. So we're losing a lot of tax dollars. So that needs to also be factored into the equation, the loss of tax dollar and the acquisition of the 2.8 million. And just to remind everyone, that is not bond money. That $2.8 million was taken directly out of our town reserve, emergency reserve money. And if there was ever a time right now that we need emergency money, it certainly is now, and we can't touch it because it's in that Shelva building.
All right.
point.
Thank you, Keith, for the presentation.
Yeah, wait, I had another question. I had a couple more questions. How long did you say the current library, the doors would be closed during construction? 3 months? 4 months?
I would say a year, I mean, you can do some of the construction, but I think for the most part, the space on the site and the logistics would require, us to dominate the whole site.
Okay, so what do we do with the library? Put it in storage? Does
Uh,
that cost factored in?
Not from my standpoint, no.
Okay, so there's no provision in this cost for
For an
library
alternate,
relocation or store? We have to get a big storage unit for that one. Or everybody in town take home a couple books. I don't know. All right, with that aside, the finished product, Keith, would it be an open span building?
it could be, for the most part, we would need at least post and beam configuration at every juncture of additions. That is
Right.
between the schoolroom, original residence, the 96 edition and the
Right.
76 edition.
Right.
We would need at least post and beam configuration there. And it's not a completely square building, so obviously there are those jogs as well, right?
So basically, the finished product will not have line of sight like the Belmont space.
Correct, because of the jogs, correct.
And the reason for line of sight is so you can have less employees backed up with cameras. So the library attendees are safe. Women, children, everybody's safe. That's why you need an open span. One more question. Which building is more marketable to sell, to refit or sell? Wouldn't a frontage for retail on Kingstown Road and Castle Street
That's a real
refit
estate.
that building into 3 condos? Wouldn't that be more marketable than trying to sell a
I'd have to
Belmont
defer-
space?
I'd have to defer to you and Jill on that, Patrick.
All right, cam charges were mentioned. I'm gonna go over this one more time. We're gonna sign a 10-year lease with the liquor store. The liquor store pays the cam charges, and it's not 5% a year. If they do request more cam charges, which Gil Bain's under contract with somebody to sell his whole process, so we would have a new partner in this. And under the terms, it does not go up 5% a year. It can go up to 5% a year, but they have to justify it. They have to show us cause, and we can review this at any time. So this isn't just a blanket, oh, well, it's going up 5% a year. Everybody go home, shut the library down, everybody go home.
No one's saying
So
that.
there's misinformation out there. The liquor store pays the cam charges, and right now, we put about $20,000 in cash in our pocket that can be used to maintain the outside of the building. And they're paying, and they got 14%. Once the lease is signed, they pay 14% taxes and of that space. So just want to make that clear.
I would like to comment on something that was just said a few minutes ago. So Councilor Lawler brought up the idea that this project could be started like right away, over the next month or so. I think there's 2 points there. One is, we've discussed this in the past, by charter, the library board are the custodians of the interior of the space. So any project that's going to affect the inside of the building needs to be approved by the library board. So unless we're going to build a shell, this shouldn't go forward without the library board's approval. The second is the idea that we would enter into a contract on a multi-million-dollar project 2 weeks before a primary election and 2 months before the election general should not happen. I think
And
everyone.
I didn't mean, I was saying, could we potentially do that? And the library
Well-
board has been very, very, making sure that we understand that we have, that's why we're in the jam we are right now, because unfortunately, the library board of trustees will not work with the town. It's true that they have the authority over it. I saw the organizational chart that was being floated around by the board over the weekend. They do. And the way our town is set up, so everyone knows, is that we have our school committee, which are elected officials, and we have our library board of trustees, which are appointed by the council. Both parties, once we give them dollar amounts, they can do with whatever they want with the money that they have, and their charge. Unfortunately, the school committee will work with us. mean, recently I had a conversation with Dr. Cummings about the COVID and how much is it going to cost to bring the kids back to school. And he said about maybe up to 2 million. But then he came back and said, but don't worry about it. We're not going to be coming back asking for money. We'll reallocate. We don't have that same working relationship with the Library Board of Trustees, which has been the problem all along, because they have the authority over the dollars, how they're spent. We can't do anything about it. So Jesse, you're an excellent point, but you know, I have to think that, you know, I didn't mean that we could decide this tonight, but oh, you know that. Come on, you're just
I
making.
don't know that. I do not know that.
Political point. And, you know, it's
No, not decided tonight, but you're floating it out there. So, you know, the reason why
that's
you
not, it's a little bit of a twist, Jesse, and I think
the
you know
reason
that.
why we
Frank,
don't have a
yeah.
good relationship with the library board is because the council's
Frank
cut their
the
budget 2
monkey, yeah.
years in a row in half.
Uncle,
Who would have a relationship under those circumstances?
Once the election is.
Jill, I have one more question that I either I missed it or didn't hear it or something. How are you gonna pay for this?
I said one potential that we could do, and that's why I had Chris from the finance department come on in and explain the fact that the council is able to bond out a certain percentage without going to a referendum. So if we would want to do this, and again, the library board unfortunately needs to approve it before we can do anything. The council has no authority over the money or the building. There's stewards of the building. So that is just, we could potentially do it if they would want to do it this way.
Right. Then I have a question for Chris. Chris, if you will, indulge me. Okay, thank you. Oh, there she is. Aren't we're kind of tight with bond money right now because we already have, we used some of our reserve to purchase the 2.4 million and the 477,000 to purchase the Belmont space out of our reserve. Wouldn't we have to revoke the $5.8 million bond and say we're not going to use that bond anymore? We're going to discontinue that bond and then float a new bond? Because I think we're kind of maxed out in the bond department, aren't we? Wouldn't you say?
Where the bonds, we're okay with bonds. It's the fund balance. We have a low fund balance, and according to
Correct.
our ordinance, it's 10 to 16.6%, and we're at about 11.7 or 11.6, give or take.
Right.
And we spend this at the end of June 2020. So as far as what we'd have to do with that bond, I would have to refer to bond counsel. I
Right.
don't have the expertise in bonds to answer
Understood.
that question.
Okay, thank you.
But Chris, the bond, just so everyone knows that the bond, like the road bond, is for the roads in phase 3.
Correct.
That's approved by the voters, and that's more than the discretionary borrowing. We can do discretionary borrowing of approximately, you said 450 for 6 months. It's 900,000 for a year. That's discretionary borrowing that we could use
Right.
for practically any purpose, but it's not a large number. It's less than $1 million, but that is for emergency purposes and it's for any purpose really. We have that ability, but that's separate from an approved bond of the voters.
Correct. It's a percent of our total operating budget.
Yeah.
And keep in
So-
mind, Patrick, at that point, we'd be able to sell the IGA building. We'd be able to sell Pure Liquor, their building. They're under contract for $735,000. We could have that back into our coffer, and then we could sell the other building as well.
Well, we tried that. That didn't work out too well. My point is the
Because
current library is more marketable because it has road frontage. It has, you know, you have 3 condos there, a total of 9,000 square feet that Keith could refit, and either we could lease it or just sell those condos and to offset the cost for the library, which is not in the flood zone. It's in a 500-year flood zone. Everybody called me, oh, the Belmont's in a flood zone. It's a flood zone. I said, it's a 500-year flood zone. The current
Yeah.
library is in a 100-year flood zone.
You're so
Nolan
right.
Ryan could throw a pitch from one to the other. They're pretty close in proximity.
Well, you need to go look at the flood map, the FEMA flood map.
That's wonderful.
There's a demarcation
I
line
also
between
have
100-year
eyes.
and 500-year. This is what I do for a living. So,
Right.
you know,
Patrick, you're right. And again, you know what? You're right. Up by the community center, you can sell both because it's the most marketable. And if you built it up by the community center, think of all that money you just talked about. To the taxpayer,
Then why do
Zero
we
problem.
vote to put it in the pier? Why do we
Well,
waste 5 years
I
dithering
wasn't on the
around
council.
and now we
I
had a
wasn't on-
plan, we bought
Hey,
the
I wasn't
building,
on the
we're,
council.
we're 2 steps away to
Well,
execute this plan.
right.
And
And let's get back to your little cam fee thing, because I want people to understand this in the right manner. I want them to know a number, which everybody doesn't tend to know a number. So it's 38,000 currently. And there is a clause that says 5% increase.
up to 5%.
All right.
I made
but-
sure that got in there, up
There
to.
you go, up to 5%.
Thank
So,
you.
on contracted services, that goes out to bid. So it goes out to bid, and let's just say somebody comes in at 5%. Again, do we want to keep battling every year with Gilbane over a cam fee? Do we? I don't think we do.
For starters,
right?
for starters,
Patrick, let
All
me.
right, go
One at
ahead.
a
You can
time,
come right in.
one at a
You can
time,
come-
please.
You can come right in at any point, Patrick. So I just want people to know this. If you take 38,000 and you multiply it by 20 years, it's $760,000 that we've given to Gilbane.
Right.
Now, if Gilbane can somehow come up with this up to 5% over 20 years, it's 1.13297550. $1,132,975.50. Now, I'm not going to disagree with you, Patrick, about he has to justify it. But I can tell you right now in contracted services, because I've dealt with them, I've done it with companies. I've been the guy negotiating contracted services. If you can't find the companies to come do the work, you will be stuck, and they know that you have need of contracted services. So I definitely don't want to be in court with Gilbane, because I want to say this to the public. Tell me when we have beaten Gilbane in court. That's what I thought. Never,
all right, no, I'll answer that,
never.
For starters, I love it how you use Gilbane as a boogeyman. Now, for me, this is getting the pier back, not selling out to Gilbane. So your narrative is all wrong. But let's go back to Gilbane. It's not going to be Gilbane. Gilbane has that property in Stretcher Road, and all camp fees are going to be taken over by another entity. Okay,
Ooh,
and
right.
they are waiting for this library nonsense to be resolved before they move forward with a closing.
Well, get ready for your 5% increase. And by the way,
Well,
just
Ricky,
so
you know
people
what?
know.
All
Hold
right,
on,
well,
just so
listen, then
people
get
know.
ready. When FEMA moves
Right.
the goalpost and the
Right.
floodplain rises another 5
Hey,
feet, your children's room better have some water wings, okay?
Patrick, up at the community center, guess what? Not
Then
only,
why did
There you go.
President
There you
Mannix
go.
vote it to put in the pier?
Hey,
I wanted
no,
it at the O'Brien wing. We've
and
been through all this. We have
I
been
agree-
through all this.
I agree with you, but the public's never
What
gotten
public?
the option. The public, the
You mean the
taxpayer.
67% that voted to put
The
in the
bond.
Belmont and
No,
refit
they
that
didn't.
building?
No, stop with that figure.
Didn't say that.
67.9
Didn't
didn't.
get
So
Belmont.
let's just go with this.
Sorry, 68%. I should round
It's
up.
67.9.
We're not reading the same
Right.
newspapers, okay?
Well, you don't have the facts. Look at you
I
gotta
don't
look
have
at the
the
voter.
facts.
Look at the voter thing. It's
All
67.
us were so excited. They've never seen a
So
library bond pass with
off-
68% of the vote.
Off the tax roll,
Everyone is.
28,000 a year times
Hey,
20
Belmont.
years is $560,000. So in 20 years,
Then let's refit
Hold
the
on.
old library and sell
20
condos.
in 20 years, we will have taken 560 off the tax roll. We've given Gilbane, because he's 38,000, nobody's going up. They're gonna say, you're the town in Narragansett, we love you.
The liquor store pays the can
760,000.
fees.
The liquor store should own the building.
The liquor
Why
store pays the can fees.
The
Okay.
liquor store should own the building.
Well, they
Why don't-
better buy it. Now they put a
Right.
1 mile buffer up.
Right, well, hey,
All right.
that should have been
Now
done.
they
a
better
long
buy it,
time ago.
right?
Right. Well, why don't you let them buy your house and you can lease your house from them?
No,
How would
because
you feel about
it's
that?
not zoned. It's not zoned
Right.
properly.
Okay,
That's a
so
use change, Rick. That ain't gonna work. Come up with
700
another one. Come up with
700
another one for the primary.
760,000 in cam fees, 560 off the tax roll. What are we looking
All right,
at?
we got
1
camp
point-
fees. All right, let's say the camp
1.3
fees.
million.
let's say the camp
1.3
fees,
million.
let's say the camp
Out
fees are
the window.
60,000 a year.
Out
Let's
the
say the
window.
camp fees are 60,000 a year. That's
Wow.
1.2 million in 20
Wow.
years. Right now, the liquor store is paying us just about 60,000 a year for that lease. Okay,
Liquor store,
so we got
they
camp
should own
fees
the
that go
building.
20 years. They'll be paid for by that liquor store.
The liquor store should own the building. Everybody knows that. Nobody
All right,
wants to
well,
be in the
Keith, how much is it to refit a liquor store?
Or turn it into a library?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm just joking
There you
around. I'm just
go.
joking around.
Right. So we can argue these points forever and ever. The
Well,
topic
you
is
know what? The
he
people
threw out
voted.
some numbers.
Ricky, you forget the people voted a bond to refit the
A
building.
bond.
Don't you
Oh.
A bond.
understand?
No, they voted for a bond. A
Renovate,
bond, Patrick. A bond.
renovate or.
You've had people call you, Patrick, and tell you that. You hang the phone up on them and tell them they're nuts.
I've never hung the phone up
No,
on
come on.
nobody. I have
You
never
tell
hung the
people
phone.
they're nuts.
I've never hung the phone up on anybody.
You know.
All
these
right, I think
individuals.
right now, I think it's important that, I think we've gotten what we need from Keith. I'm gonna ask moderator if the chair of the Board of Trustees would like to present regarding the existing building.
Existing. Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome. And like I said at the beginning, I think we have all the resources we need
Yep.
to, once we get our marching orders from the community and the voters, we have an enthusiastic staff with all of their programs. They can communicate to the architect to make sure that the building meets those needs. And we have a very enthusiastic council and experts in all the fields necessary to make the right decisions. So I think it's important we get the input from the community and then we can make it happen.
Thank you, Keith.
Amen.
Thank you.
Make sure if we dig up any treasures, Keith, we can pay off the debt. That's all I care about.
Okay.
All right, Dan.
I'm just bringing her in now.
Okay, so Dan, am I in now?
You are in.
Okay, so I did have the numbers that were prepared and presented, you know, starting in 2014, 2015, 2016. I believe they are all assembled in the town manager's office. I know that Jim Manny had a huge booklet of all this work. So I'm kind of flabbergasted that people like Matt Mannix, who've been on the council for years, say that these numbers do not exist. But it becomes really apparent.
I didn't
to me
say that. I didn't say that tonight. I didn't say that tonight. Go ahead.
Gee, thanks. It becomes apparent to me that none of these numbers are really relevant to the people that brought this motion. So let's start with the misinformation that's being said once again. There will be no OLIS reimbursement because Ricky Lima and Jill Lawler and Matt Mannix have not fully funded the library. So when you give us operating budget of 400,000 and our payroll is 756, you cannot even apply for grant and aid, which is renovating and building a library. So
Matt,
that's the
please
first.
to the workshop topic, please.
The existing site, the presentation you had with the architect about 5 or 6 years ago, that you had an alternative price for the existing site versus the Belmont. That's what we're talking about, the
So, and
existing
again,
site.
I am
So,
going to.
I believe his last name
Or
was
I'm
Presbury.
not going to speak.
I
and
believe
will
his last
post it
name, I
publicly.
believe his last name was Presbury, but I may be mispronouncing it, but.
So again, there will not be OLIS money to pay for any of this until you reinstate our budget. Just as that was discussed in this workshop, I get to talk about it. Again, if you reinstate our budget right now and we go forward with trying to renovate the current building, we have to adhere to the consultant's report, again, to file for grant and aid. And that's physical space of not 15,000 square feet, but of 20 to 24,000 in the needs assessment, as well as the parking spaces, which was a minimum of 49, or you won't get reimbursement. Again, this is all stuff on OLIS, irregardless of where you're going to get your bond money to pay for it. I'm gratified that you now realize you have to invite the library board, because honestly, this kind of workshop where you won't even discuss it with us will also not get you OLIS money. No disrespect to ABCOR or the architect, which wasn't introduced here, but we need a library architect. And if we go for state money, they audit, they have lots of rules, and it can't be done in 6 months on the cheap, you know, with someone who goes, why don't you just build a building there? That's what I am looking for. We need a library, and it was voted for by these people in this town of 70% in 2016. So it's kind of flabbergasting that you can come back now and say, we need to analyze this. Jill's had 4 years on the council, Matt, innumerable years, Ricky, you've had 2 years, and you're within 70 days. This is when you want to look at dollar amount for our current building. That's kind of silly. So all of these numbers that Keith put in are much lower than the numbers that were presented in 2014 and 15. And there was also an architectural plan paid for in 2008 as well. But like I said, I guess I'll just go to the press with these numbers because it's not going to make any difference from what you're playing with now. Any questions for me?
No, thank you for participating though.
I got a question. Tell Laura,
Yeah.
during this workshop, it was discovered that the library would have to shut down for a year. So I'm assuming you have to take all the product out of that building. Do you
Well,
have any
yeah,
kind of,
I would agree with that. You know, some of the stuff that we presented in 2014 and 15 was moving everything out. Then you have to rent a space and operate some sort of library to serve the people. You're going to have to cut a lot of staff because it's probably not going to be the same size. So it's storage on that as well. So storage, renting a space, operating the library, all of those add up to, you know, clearly $7 or $8 million on getting the 20,000 square foot of where we are currently. So again, when this was predicated, when we went out looking for the 20,000, 24,000 square feet, trying to get the 50% reimbursement, which the state will do if you follow their rules, the Belmont building was by far the cheapest. And Jess Cesarine, our town engineer, wrote an entire essay about how you cannot build a building for 135 feet. I'm sorry, $135 a square foot.
that's right.
And that's not even counting into the fact how expensive land and parking is in the pier. So
Yep.
That's how it was chosen. So just so that everyone can understand, this is sort of a sleight of hand now to see what can we do 70 days before the election. But I would say this is going to be a political answer, and we'll find out from there.
So you said 20,000 square feet, Laurie. Where's the 20,000 square feet? You're gonna take the liquor store out of the picture?
No, you got 18.
Well,
And
she
we
said
have the
20
loading
though.
dock. And we
She
have the
said-
loading dock. The loading
That's
dock.
That's outdoors.
Half a load.
Well, we can enclose it and build, can't we?
Oh, I'm sure you can do anything you want,
Well,
You
we
have
do have the
already.
donors
right? You have
that
already.
endorsed this project, which you can't even
Right.
thank them for giving money to this. So, you know, again, Champlain funds, there's all sorts of foundations that are standing by to give us money
Right.
for a particular project. It's not
Right.
adding a room onto our current building. It
Right.
just isn't.
Should put it up by the community center where you can include transportation. You can include the lunch program with the community center. You can provide the education from the elementary school.
And what
Everybody-
do you think that's
Hub's
gonna
right
cost,
there.
Ricky? What do you
Well,
think
he
that's
just-
gonna cost?
He just told you, $400 a square foot times
No,
20,000.
it's not.
Keith
Tiverton
Cavall just
Library
said-
that you,
Excuse
Tiverton
me, Keith,
Library was
just said
11.7 in
400
2015. So
400
you're not
square-
gonna get it
square
cheaper
feet.
than that.
Okay,
400
Rick, can you let her
square feet.
speak? Rick, can you have a
400
little
square
respect?
feet.
and let the-
She
let her
asked me
speak?
for what I was
You
talking
repeat
about.
yourself 10
400
times.
square
Let
feet,
her speak for a
400
second.
square
All
feet
right?
times 20,000 is 8 million. 50% reimbursement is $4 million to the taxpayer. Sell the property down.
So why did
Yeah.
they spend
Sell-
11.7
sell the-
in Tiverton?
Sell the property in the pier and the taxpayer doesn't have to pay a dime. Wow, that would be great. Taxpayer wouldn't have to pay a dime. That's amazing. And we'd have transportation, lunch program, school education right next door. The parents can just drop them off. Everybody can be in that nice community. And we own the property. We won't have to pay Gilbane $760,000 and take
Liquor store, the
$560,000.
lease pays its
Oh,
CAM charges, Rick.
My goodness. That's amazing. And the liquor store can own the building. Wouldn't
All
that
right,
be wonderful? Thank
It's
you.
been on the market, Rick, for 10 years. Okay, no buyers. Okay.
With Gilbane,
We picked it up for $133 per square foot. Plus we have a tenant, plus we got 59 parking spaces. Okay. Over there in the condos, residents are selling their parking spaces for 10,000 per parking space. Okay, we got 50, that's $590,000 in parking right there. All
When
right,
did the
you can look that one up.
when did the public approve you going into their checkbook and taking out 2.8 million? When was that?
It was in
I didn't vote.
2016 bond. there.
They voted on that?
Yes,
Take
they
out
did. Yeah, they
2.8
did, Rick. Yeah, yeah.
2.8 million out of their checkbook or out of
Listen,
the bond?
They can vote
Listen,
on
Rick,
that.
Rick, this Johnny Come Lately show is
Oh,
just to get just to check off a box, print the
oh.
palm cards, and let's just end this meeting, okay?
Oh,
All right.
all right.
And good luck in the primary.
You don't like it when the facts are presented.
No, we presented the facts. We had a plan. You guys goofed it, and then we ended up not replenishing the reserve. We would have got
I
that.
have-
We wouldn't even let us in the building.
I haven't goofed anything, Patrick. What I would tell the taxpayer is how are we gonna pay this $500,000 note? How? With
We
what?
had.
With
it's not-
what?
listen,
8 cents on the thousand, you
10
tell us.
let's say
8
10 cents on the dollar. Let's say 10 cents there. Okay.
We
What's
don't
the
even-
value of your home, Rick? 800,000.
If we had
Okay,
10
it's
cents
$80.
on the dollar,
$80 a year
if we
every
had
year for
10
20 years to
cents,
pay off the bond.
if we had
Okay.
10 cents on the
That's the
dollar,
worst case scenario.
how come we haven't put 2 cents into the road maintenance? Ask
Well,
me that.
I look around. I see roads getting fixed. I see roads getting fixed everywhere.
Oh.
There's new roads in the pier.
All
There's new
right,
roads
I
in my
think-
neighborhood.
I think we're a little bit off topic. I think the road bond is very important as well. We have concerns about that. I think it's important. I think want to thank Keith and Lori for
Can
being
walk
here.
and chew gum at the same time.
Make
I
one more
think-
point, Matt.
I think Jill, if you have one more point to wrap up, I think we've had a lot of points, and then I'll just close it after that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So tonight, really, the purpose of tonight was twofold: to find out whether or not we could renovate the building, whether or not it was capable of that, with whether we could structurally able. We found out we are, and we also found out the cost that Keith put onto it. And I mentioned before that there was no public information about this out there, which is why we wanted to have a workshop to put a number on. The one piece of information I could find was from the September 28th, 2015 Town Council workshop meeting with the library. And it's not on the library website, it wasn't there. And Terry helped me locate it in the clerk's office today. And there were four numbers put on that, and these weren't out there publicly. So this from 2015, the cost estimator, who I believe was Tim Sullivan. Not that it makes a difference, but it kind of does. It's the Library Board of Trustees and Sullivan's husband. They put the number out for the renovation of current site of 4.5 million, new building existing site, 5.9 million, new building on Green, which I believe would be the community center, 7.5, and the Belmont site is 6.2 million. So those numbers are kind of consistent with what Keith gave us tonight. But the one part to bring home is what Rick just so well explained, the additional cost of that building, not on the tax roll, and the CAM fees. So thank you, Matt, for allowing me to make that last statement.
All right, again, I want to thank the people who came in to help us with this, Mr. Lescarbeau and the chair of the Board of Trustees, Lori Kelly. Thank you to the council members. A couple of things I just wanted to mention. The second, during Corona in May of 2020, Moody's, we got our rating and it was a AA2. So even in difficult times where we were losing money, you may remember the budget, we had to make some last minute decisions. So that's something I've always been concerned about and don't want to jeopardize having a good that good rating from the rating agencies. And it's something that I'm proud of in my years on the council. I'm glad Patrick brought up the summer of 2019, because what I have said throughout this process is when that agenda item was for a more modest improvements to the library. So we weren't going to the size, because the sizes that we're talking about are basically significant expansions of the existing library. And that's not what I was proposing last summer of 19. I was talking about more modest improvement. I thought some of the electorate was feeling that way, that we didn't need to go for as big of a project. There was a comment or a request by email and followed up on at the prior meeting about people wanting to go through the library to look at it as private citizens. I'm sorry, not to go through the library. If you want to go through the library, that you can do that as well. You can go through any building, but also the IGA building. And so that if people would like to do that and look through it, that I encourage them to contact the town manager. But I think that in the end, my concern, what I was looking for a year ago was more modest improvements to the library, and was and the council just didn't feel they wanted to go that way. They went for more extensive improvements. But I think that existing site, an underused second floor, and then an opportunity to maybe expand some of the parking would cost a lot less than the numbers we're talking about tonight. So with that being said, concludes the work session. I want to thank everyone again, and have a great night and a great end of the summer. Take care, everybody.
Yep.